يعني موجود هو هنا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة، ويا باب غريب يا مظلوم، يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. يقول the volume was very good. I don't know who played with it right now. The topic of steadfastness has a very, very close link to the topic of role models. You see, in our day-to-day lives, we take role models without us noticing. When you are a child and you start watching all of these TV shows, you start watching all of these sports, you tend to realize that you have picked a particular person and you intend to imitate this person. That's why little children, when they get attached to soccer, they either choose Ronaldo or Messi. And I know that there was a time period where everyone wanted, and this is still continuing today, everyone wanted to cut their hair like Ronaldo and Messi. So it is quite obvious that throughout our lives we have taken role models that have formed the identity that many of us have today. If we look into the works of psychology, they say that role models have both a negative and a positive impact on a human being. For example, when your child is young and you see them playing soccer, when the child finishes, in order for you to compliment the child, what do you say to him? Today you played like Messi. Today you played like Ronaldo. This, in the head of the child, then builds an image that I did a good job because my father compared me to these soccer players. So then the child continues throughout his life to build this persona that I am only good if I look like these role models. And that is a negative impact upon the child, because the child loses his inner identity. He is no longer acting himself. He is looking after or looking out to see what these role models do, what these social media influencers do, and they copy them. On a positive note, sometimes they use famous influencers out in society to promote something that is good. For example, participating in sport. The child sees that this influencer is speaking about the importance of sport, speaking about the importance of not smoking, so then the people follow this person because they look at them as being a role model for them. In today's society, one of the greatest challenges that we face is the issue of imitating other people. That's why in Western media, or in the Western world, when you look at Netflix, when you look at Amazon Prime and all of these broadcasting companies, all the youth want to be is, I want to become a gangster like this man. I want to become like Pablo Escobar. Because look at how he was portrayed in the shows. If you look at the documentary that was released within the last year, there was a documentary that was released in the form of a TV series about Jeffrey Dahmer, the man that committed these crimes a few years ago, a few decades ago. If you look in the things that were written, some people began to like Jeffrey Dahmer, and some of the females used to send him letters in prison saying to him, "We are in love with you." This man committed crimes, but it was the persona that they perceived that this man is cool, look what he had done, that they ended up following his footsteps. We like this man, and they said that they sent him hundreds of letters. I put out a poll on Instagram before I came to see, are people affected by these or not? And ask yourself this question, my brothers and sisters. Have you ever seen a product that was advertised on social media and then you went out and brought this product because you seen someone advertising for it or not? Most of the votes that I received were yes. We purchased certain things because certain celebrities went out and advertised for these products. Whether it be some soccer shoes, whether it be the new phone, this celebrity has a new phone so I need to buy it. And you judge based on the decisions that you have made, based on the influences that you have seen. The topic for tonight is a female's greatest role model. Because we are quite aware that our sisters are very oppressed in the community based on the female influences that we currently see in today's society. If you are to ask any woman right now in the social media world, who is a successful woman? What do they say to you? A woman that has a stable job, a woman that has a stable income, a woman that needs no man, she can live on her own. And this is what society has labeled as the successful woman, a woman that needs no one. And this is the danger that we are facing in today's society, my brothers and sisters. With the current agenda that is being spread out by the rainbow community, the sacredness of a house is slowly being destroyed. How? The mother doesn't have to remain at home and raise her children. That's not only a man's role. The woman can go out, she can work for her family. The Western media has designed it for us in such a way that we call this female empowerment. A woman has power when she goes out and works. A woman has power when she doesn't need no man to provide for her. It sounds amazing, don't get me wrong, this sounds very great, but there's a danger. You know who the danger is? It's not you and I. We're old enough to understand right and wrong. The danger is the lives of your children. It's the future generations to come. They are the ones that will pay for this. Their identities are then lost. You know why? Because most of the time they're at school. And the propaganda that is spread at school is what breaks up society. Yes, I might see my child from 4 to 9 p.m. before he goes to sleep. And then I see him in the morning for breakfast, if we still have breakfast these days. I know we get up and we send them straight to school. The only time I see my son or my daughter for a long period of time That's on the weekend. And that's lucky if my child even sits with me, he isn't in his room on his PlayStation or on his iPad. So the West is continuously spreading this propaganda into the child's mind that then they lose their identity. And that's the danger that the West is currently manipulating our female sisters. So inshallah, I will get into the topic of a female's greatest role model. But before I do that, I request that everyone does 3 salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There is another aspect that we don't see when we look at social media influencers. We see that they are successful because of the fame they have. We see that they are successful due to the amount of money they have. They are successful because they have everything left, right, and center. But there is one thing that they lack very, very dearly, and that is their spiritual connection. They don't connect. They might have the fame, but spiritually they are lacking somewhere. You might say to me, throw an example for me to prove what you are saying. There is a famous Egyptian singer, and I don't need to mention singers on the minbar for us to believe these things, but let me clarify this so that the younger generation understand that there is another aspect to fame that we don't see. There is a spiritual aspect. There is a famous singer by the name of Tamir Husni. This man is an Egyptian singer. Many years ago, they had an interview with him, and they said to him, you know, you are a nice, young, handsome man, not like me. You don't have a gut, you have abs, everyone is around you, you have all the money. What is one thing that is constantly ringing in your brain? Something that is constantly ringing in your mind that this has affected you. You know what he said? He said that I wish that I don't die as a singer. That I wish I don't spend the entirety of my life and I die as being a singer. Why? Because he feels that there is a type of naqs, there is a type of something that he has lost in himself if he remains that way. So it's very important, and he has established this, that it is very important that I return back to my spirituality. There are a few points that our sisters can take from this. Number one, that they have the greatest role model to exist in this world. They don't have to look after or look up to a specific entrepreneur and follow her. This woman has this website, I want to become like her. She has this business, I want to become like her. Remember, that breaks the household, because that's what the Western propaganda wants. Let's look to Lady Fatima to Zahra'i alayha salam. And let's see how Lady Fatima has become a role model to the females. In a hadith that Shaykh al-Saduq alayhi rahmah mentions in his book Al-Amali, Imam al-Sadiq was asked, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam stated that Fatima is the mistress of the women of paradise. Fatima sayyidatu nisa'il alameen. So then the narrator asks Imam al-Sadiq, he says to him, O son of Rasulullah, is this Nisa'ul Alameen only exclusive to her time or not? Because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elaborated when he said, Lady Maryam, she is the mistress of all women. So Imam al-Sadiq says that this hadith about Lady Maryam was only exclusive to the women in her time. And Fatima is the mistress of all women in paradise. Which means that Lady Fatima is the mistress of Lady Maryam. And this hadith is also found in Sahih al-Bukhari. If people might want to come and say, okay, if Lady Maryam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described her in the Holy Quran as being the mistress of the females, then Sahih al-Bukhari, Rasulullah says to Fatima, Ama taradina, will you not become satisfied, O Fatima, if you become the mistress of the women of paradise in its entirety? Which means Lady Fatima is the mistress of also Lady Maryam. Then comes the second point. How can the women of today's society receive the shafa'ah, the intercession of Lady Fatima? Based on this hadith that Shaykh al-Saduq mentions in his book Al-Amani, there is a clear identification or an identificating factor that Lady Fatima has an exclusive shafa'ah that only the females can receive. Shaykh al-Saduq mentions that one day Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam is sitting down, Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima al-Zahra'a enter. The hadith is very long, I just want to take the bottom points from the hadith. Rasulullah turns to Fatima al-Zahra'i ruhi laha al-fida. And then he says to her, O Fatima, it is as if the day of judgment has arrived, and you, O Fatima, will walk in front of all of the creation. And on your left, there are 70,000 angels. And on your right, there are 70,000 angels. And in front of you, there are 70,000 angels. And behind you, there are 70,000 angels. On every side, there are 70,000 angels. And following her after these angels, Rasulullah says, are the women of this ummah. But there is a catch to it. In order for the women to follow Fatima, they are subject to 6 qualities that they must have. The first quality, Rasulullah says, if a woman wants to follow Fatima and receive her intercession, is that she first needs to pray her 5 daily prayers. The second thing she must participate in is fasting the holy month of Ramadan. How many times have we neglected our wives, our mothers, our sisters in the holy month of Ramadan? They spend the day in making food, and then we end up complaining and neglecting their efforts. And then Rasulullah says, then the woman must perform Hajj. If she is able to perform Hajj, she must participate in this obligatory act. And then she must perform her zakat. She needs to pay her khums. She needs to pay that which is wajib upon her. And then the fifth thing is she must obey her husband. And then the sixth quality the woman must have is the wilaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then Rasulullah says the woman will follow Fatima into paradise, because Lady Fatima will shower this woman with her intercession. A quick note, we can perform our salah, we can do our zakat, we can perform our hajj. What the hadith is alluding to is, even though you might perform these acts based on what your marji' says, so your acts that you perform fall in line with the risala amaliyya that your marji' says, so your salah is correct. What the hadith is alluding to is, even though your salah might be correct from the fiqh perspective, how are you sure that your salah and your a'mal will be accepted? Because we have all read the hadith. How many of the people, the Imam says, read Quran and the Quran curses them? How many people pray salah and the Imam says and their salah is thrown back at them? But Rasulullah says, if the woman has these 6 things, she will be granted the shafa'ah of Lady Fatima alayha salam. How does Lady Fatima want the women to act? And this probably is a very sensitive topic, especially that our sisters, unfortunately, have been manipulated by society. They might think that these 2 points that I'm going to mention are a bit tough. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not fear the truth. How does Lady Fatima want the woman to be? First of all, her hijab. My sister, how is your hijab? They're probably saying, oh, here we go again, another hijab lecture. Is your hijab that of which Lady Fatima agrees to or not? How is your hijab? You might look at your hijab, I'm wearing the hijab, I'm covering my hair and I'm covering up until the end of my hand and I am covering my feet, because unfortunately, for some reason, there is a very, very dangerous misconception that your feet can be shown. It's haram for the female's foot to be shown in public, according to a unanimous opinion of the Maraja', may Allah bless them. So how is your hijab? You might perceive your hijab as looking good, and this is where the hawa, your desires, overcome you. How many sisters have their picture as their profile picture on social media? You know what Lady Fatima says? I see everyone is smiling in here. This is reality. If you want to follow Fatima, this is what Fatima wants. How many sisters have their picture, their face as their profile picture on their social media accounts? This is nothing to see the one who takes his desire as his Lord. I seen a nice clip on social media by a speaker. He says, a woman comes up and she says, Shaykhna, I want to upload a picture of me. Selfie, I'm in my abaya. I'm in my niqab, as they call it. Nothing is showing but my eyes. Then why upload a picture of yourself? I'm in full hijab. Okay, you're in full hijab. After a while, the niqab becomes a bit loose. You can see her eyes, her eyelashes, mashallah. After a while, as we say, the bushiyah is then removed. Okay, bushiyah is removed. Is there a problem? Refer back to Sayyid al-Khu'ya and ask Sayyid al-Khu'ya if there's a problem. Okay, remove your bushiyah. After a while, the hijab went from a butterfly abaya to the abaya of a worm. Meaning, before you couldn't see anything because it was a butterfly abaya, you can't see her body. And then after a while, it became like a worm. You can see everything from her body. Slowly, slowly. If society becomes manipulated by the Western propaganda, this is what happens. Her hijab goes from the complete hijab to wearing pants and a tight hijab. Hawa'un nafs. This is your soul. This is your soul convincing you to follow its desires. So Lady Fatima, first of all, wants your hijab to be complete. Some might say, Shaykhna, you know, we can never have the hijab of Fatima. We live in the West. How can we wear the abaya? How can we wear the bushiyah in the West? This is your hawa'un nafs. This is your desire. I once heard from a brother, he said to me that there was a sister that once said, if my hijab does not make the West fear me, then my hijab is incomplete. Your hijab needs to be full. The hijab of Fatima, the hijab of Zainab. Secondly, is to make sure that you protect your house. We go back to the introduction. Take care of your children. Hold tightly onto your children. Minimize their exposure to the Western propaganda. You know the reward you get for being a Fatimi or a Fatimiyya to the sisters? Listen, it's going to be hard, my sisters. That's the whole point of life. Obeying Allah is hard. If you let your desires overcome you. One day, Al-Allam al-Majlisi radwanullah ta'ala alayhi in al-Bihar, he mentions a hadith. He says one day, Ayman, after Fatima died, she said, by Allah, I will not remain in Mecca after the death of Fatima. I will not remain in Al-Medina after the death of Fatima. Lady Fatima reaches the status of martyrdom. She then leaves Al-Medina by walking to Mecca. One day, Ayman becomes very thirsty on the way to Mecca. She then turns around, she lifts her hand, she says, Oh Allah, I was a servant of Fatima. I am thirsty. Al-Allama says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down from the sky a bucket of water, and for 7 years Ayman did not feel hungry or thirsty after drinking that water. That is the status of the Fatimiyya, the woman that adheres to Fatima, that follows in the steps of Fatima salamullah alayha. So it is very important, my brothers and my sisters. You know, I don't blame the sisters, I blame the brothers for giving this much attention to the desires, to their desires, which has made men look at women in a materialistic way. And then we have these social media influencers that have manipulated the minds of our sisters. Our sisters, you have the likes of Fatima to Zahra. You say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is how significant the status of women are. Through a woman, Islam is maintained. Fatima through Fadak. Lady Zainab, her khutbah in front of Yazid. The woman's status is very, very important. Prophet Shu'aib's daughter in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes them and he uses them as an example. He says that when the men used to go and fill up their buckets with water, these two women, these two sisters will remain away from the men until the men went. Then they would go and fill their buckets up with water. Prophet Musa sees this. He sees this chastity from the women. He gets married to one of them. Don't say that I live in an ummah that is very hard. Australia, it's very hard to wear a abaya. It's very hard to wear a bushiyah. It's very hard. Look at Asya bint Muzahim in the Quran, the wife of Fir'aun. Are you in the time of Fir'aun or not? No, you're not. Are you able to practice your religion freely or not? Yes, you are. Australia lifted its head up very hard, very high by saying we accept everyone. That's not an excuse. Asya bint Muzahim lived in a time of a man that said, I am your Lord. Allah uses her in the Quran as an example to the men and the females. He says to the people, look, she was under the ruling of a man that believed he was God, but she remained chaste. She left her iffah. She remained on her iffah. She left her desires. And that's why Allah used her as an example to the believers and the non-believers. You, my sister in the West, can reach. Was Asya bint Muzahim a ma'suma or not? Was she infallible? No, she wasn't. She was a random woman living under a dictator, and she reached the status that Allah uses her as an example to the believers, both the men and the women. The same thing, you, by living in the West, can attain that status of Asya bint Muzahim. that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings her back down when Lady Khadija was giving birth to Fatima. She reached that status that Allah resurrected her. If you hold on to your iffah, to your hijab. Do we have enough time? اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج ومن علينا برضاه وهب لنا رأفته ورحمته ودعاءه وصلى الله على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. أحسن الله عليكم.